"Those pups died 3 months ago," the guard whispered, just before
How did
Clara
they
Hayes
follow
heard
you?
one crying beneath the floor of the forbidden stable. She stopped in the moonlit courtyard, holding a basket of clean bandages against her white work dress. The sound came again, faint but unmistakable. From behind the iron-banded doors no servant was permitted to approach. Everyone at Blackwood Castle knew what lived inside. Ghost, Alpha King Ethan Blackwood's enormous white wolf, had been confined there since the royal pups disappeared during a winter storm. The council claimed grief had made him unpredictable, but Clara had spent 6 years caring for frightened horses. That cry did not belong to an angry adult wolf. It belonged to something small and afraid. Clara set down her basket and moved closer, noticing fresh straw caught beneath the locked door. Before she could call for stable master Owen Reed, hurried footsteps crossed the courtyard. Lady Victoria Ashford appeared with 2 guards and a palace steward. Victoria was expected to be formally announced as Ethan's chosen Luna when he returned from the northern border the following morning. Her silver gown looked untouched by the dusty courtyard, but her expression sharpened when she saw Clara beside the stable. "Search her," Victoria ordered. Clara stepped back in confusion. "I heard an animal inside. It may need help." One guard carefully checked her apron pockets and removed a small blue vial Clara had never seen before. The steward identified it as a powerful sedative missing from the royal medicine cabinet. Clara stared at the vial. Earlier that evening, a cloaked servant had collided with her near the supply corridor and apologized before disappearing around a corner. She understood too late why the stranger had touched her apron. Victoria declared that Clara had stolen the medicine and approached the stable to harm Ghost. Clara asked them to summon Owen or wait for King Ethan, but Victoria produced an order bearing the royal seal. It authorized the council to confine anyone who threatened the king's protected animals. The ink looked strangely fresh, although the order was dated 2 years earlier. "If she truly understands wolves as she claims, she has nothing to fear," Victoria said. The guards hesitated, yet the seal left them little choice. They opened the forbidden stable and guided Clara across the threshold before securing the doors behind her. Darkness swallowed the courtyard light. Clara stood motionless, listening to heavy breathing somewhere beyond the stalls. The stable smelled of cedar, cold stone, and a bitter medicinal sweetness. Then 2 amber eyes appeared about 20 feet away. Ghost emerged silently, his white coat glowing beneath a narrow beam of moonlight. He was larger than any wolf Clara had ever seen. She lowered her gaze and placed both empty hands where he could see them. "I am not here to hurt you," she said softly. Ghost did not approach. Instead, he shifted sideways, deliberately blocking a mound of straw near the back wall. From beneath it came the same fragile cry Clara had heard outside. She slowly knelt but kept her distance. Ghost watched her for several long seconds, then looked toward the straw. The mound trembled. One tiny white face pushed through, followed by a silver one and then a charcoal gray one. 3 pairs of frightened eyes opened in the darkness, and Clara realized the royal wolf pups had never died in the storm. Someone had hidden them inside the king's forbidden stable and had locked her in before she could tell him they were alive. Clara remained on her knees while Ghost stood between her and the 3 pups. His amber eyes followed every movement, but she recognized restraint rather than hostility in his posture. The great wolf was not guarding the stable from her. He was guarding the pups from everyone outside it. Clara slowly removed the scarf from her shoulders and placed it on the stone floor. The smallest white pup tried to crawl forward, then stopped and lowered its head. Its breathing was shallow, and its legs trembled beneath its body. Ghost immediately stepped closer, using his nose to guide the pup back toward the straw. "You have been taking care of them," Clara whispered. A wooden bowl rested beside the wall, holding only a thin layer of cloudy water. Another bowl contained a few scraps of dried meat, far too little for 3 growing pups and an adult wolf. Clara wondered how Ghost had kept them alive without anyone noticing. She noticed a narrow opening near the stable roof where small birds could enter. Beneath it lay several clean feathers and tiny animal tracks. Ghost had found his own way to feed the pups, but it had not been enough. Clara moved toward the water pump beside the nearest stall. Ghost released a low warning sound. She stopped immediately and waited until his gaze shifted toward the empty bowl. "They need clean water," she said. "So do you." She approached the pump one careful step at a time, washed the bowl, and filled it. Instead of carrying it directly to the pups, she placed it halfway between herself and Ghost before retreating. The silver pup came first. The charcoal gray pup followed, but the smallest white one remained beneath the straw. Ghost drank nothing. He watched the white pup struggle to raise its head, then looked at Clara. The plea in his eyes was clearer than any command. Clara examined the stable without moving closer. A bitter sweetness hung in the air, stronger near the feeding trough. It matched the scent of the blue vial Victoria's guard had removed from her apron. She found pale residue around the rim of a second bowl. Someone had been adding a sedative to the pup's food. The white pup's slow breathing suggested it had received too much. Clara needed her medical basket, but it remained outside the locked door. She called to the guards, explaining that one of the royal pups was ill. No one answered. Victoria had likely ordered them away. Clara searched the stalls and found clean cloth, a jar of honey, and several herbs stored for nervous horses. None could safely reverse an unknown medicine. Then she noticed a loose plank beneath the trough. Behind it was a narrow compartment containing a small brown bottle wrapped in cloth. Its handwritten label identified it as a restorative prepared by Dr. Abigail Foster. The dosage instructions were written for wolf pups. Clara understood that someone inside the castle had known the pups were alive and had tried to protect them. She reached for the bottle, but Ghost moved in front of it. Clara met his watchful gaze without challenging him. "I can help the little one," she said, "but you must decide whether to trust me." For several seconds, neither moved. Then Ghost picked up the white pup with extraordinary gentleness, carried it across the stable, and placed it directly in Clara's waiting scarf. The white pup weighed almost nothing in Clara's arms. Its fur felt cold even through the scarf, and each breath came several seconds after the one before it. Ghost lowered himself beside her, close enough that his warm coat sheltered the pup from the draft. Clara studied the brown bottle without opening it. Dr. Abigail Foster's name appeared beneath the dosage instructions, along with a batch number and the Royal Pharmacy seal. If Clara preserved the bottle untouched, it could prove that someone had prepared medicine specifically for pups the council claimed were dead. Once she broke the wax seal and used the contents, Victoria could argue that Clara had written the label herself and hidden the bottle inside the stable. It might be the strongest evidence of her innocence. The pup gave a weak whimper and pressed its face into the scarf. Clara made her choice. "Evidence can wait," she whispered. "You cannot." She broke the seal. A clean herbal scent rose from the bottle, completely different from the bitter sweetness around the feeding bowl. Clara placed one drop on her finger and held it near the pup's nose. The pup stirred, so she mixed the measured dose with fresh water and let it drink slowly from the corner of the cloth. Ghost watched every drop. When Clara returned the bottle to the floor, he sniffed it and then gently touched his nose to her wrist. It was the first sign that he accepted her presence. Clara wrapped the pup securely and rubbed its back to restore warmth. The silver and charcoal gray pups crept closer, settling against her skirt. Within several minutes, the white pup's breathing became steadier, but Clara knew the medicine could only support its recovery. Dr. Abigail still needed to examine it. She called toward the locked doors again. "There are 3 living royal pups in here. One has been drugged. Bring Dr. Foster immediately." Silence answered her. Clara moved closer to the doors and saw that a narrow observation panel had been opened from outside. Someone had been watching. The panel snapped shut before she could see a face. A moment later, smoke carrying the same sweet medicinal scent began drifting through a small vent near the floor. Ghost rose quickly and guided the pups toward the rear wall. Clara covered their noses with clean cloth, then searched for another source of air. The narrow opening near the roof was nearly 15 feet above the floor, but an old ladder rested behind a stall divider. She positioned it beneath the opening and climbed far enough to pull loose a bundle of straw blocking the gap. Cool night air poured into the stable. The smoke thinned, and Ghost remained below, guarding the pups while watching Clara's every step. Outside, she heard a carriage moving across the distant bridge. King Ethan was not expected until morning, yet the sound of royal escort horses echoed through the courtyard. Someone else heard them too. Hurried footsteps approached the stable, followed by Victoria's tense voice ordering the guards to move Clara before the king arrived. Clara climbed down and gathered the 3 pups close. Ghost placed himself in front of them as a key turned in the iron lock. Clara looked at the open brown bottle, knowing she had used the one object that might have cleared her name. Then she noticed something caught inside the broken wax seal. A tiny strip of parchment bearing half of the royal crest and a single handwritten warning. Do not trust the council record. The key turned once, then stopped as a second voice crossed the courtyard. No one moves her until I know why my seal was used without my authority. Alpha King Ethan Blackwood had returned before dawn. Clara could not see him through the iron doors, but every hurried footstep outside became still. Victoria recovered first. She welcomed Ethan home and claimed the council had prevented an attempt to poison Ghost. Ethan asked why a stable assistant had been sentenced before he had reviewed the evidence. Victoria replied that the emergency order gave her authority to act in his absence. There is no emergency order, Ethan said. Clara heard paper unfold, followed by a long silence. He ordered Commander Mason Cole to open the doors. Victoria warned that Ghost had become too dangerous, but Ethan repeated the command. Clara tucked the strip of parchment inside her sleeve and lifted the white pup against her chest. Its breathing was steadier, although it was still too weak to walk. The silver and charcoal gray pups gathered beside her. Ghost stood between them and the entrance as pale morning light spread across the floor. When the doors opened, Ethan waited several feet beyond the threshold with Mason and 4 guards. His dark hair was damp from the mist, and his black travel coat carried dust from the northern road. His ice-blue eyes moved from Clara to Ghost, then stopped on the small white face resting in her scarf. No one spoke. Ghost stepped into the courtyard first. The guards instinctively shifted, but Ethan raised one hand and kept them in place. Clara followed slowly, carrying the white pup. The other 2 walked beside her dress, remaining so close that their fur brushed her ankles. Ghost came behind them, calm and watchful. A stable worker dropped his lantern in surprise. Owen Reed covered his mouth, his eyes filling with recognition. Ethan looked at the 3 pups as if the courtyard had disappeared around him. He had been told they were lost during the winter storm. He knelt, but the silver pup moved behind Clara rather than approaching him. The charcoal gray pup did the same. Only when Clara lowered herself beside Ethan did they step forward. They trust you, he said quietly. Clara explained that Ghost had kept them alive and that someone had placed a sedative in their food. She showed him the cloudy bowl, the opened restorative, and the pale residue around the trough. Victoria interrupted, arguing that Clara could have brought everything inside. Ethan did not answer her. He examined the order that had authorized Clara's confinement, turning it toward the rising light. Then he removed the signet ring from his hand and pressed it gently over the wax impression. The outer crest aligned, but the center mark did not. His true seal carried a narrow line through the crown, added after an attempted forgery 2 years earlier. The order used the older design. This seal is false, Ethan announced. Victoria's composure faltered for only a moment. She insisted that a palace clerk must have made an innocent mistake. Ethan ordered Mason to close the courtyard gates and secure every council record connected to the missing pups. He then asked Dr. Abigail Foster to be summoned. Clara handed him the small strip of parchment. Ethan read the warning, turned it over, and went completely still. On the back was a faded handwritten symbol that Clara did not recognize. Ethan did. It belonged to his late mother, the former queen, who had supposedly died before the 3 pups were even born. Dr. Abigail Foster arrived within minutes and examined the white pup in a warm room beside the courtyard. Ghost refused to leave Clara, so Ethan allowed the great wolf and the other 2 pups to remain nearby. Abigail confirmed that the white pup had received too much sedative, but Clara's quick use of the restorative had stabilized its breathing. She also confirmed that she had prepared the brown bottle 4 months earlier after receiving an unsigned request written on royal stationery. The request never named the pups, yet it specified their ages, weight, and white, silver, and charcoal gray coloring. Abigail had hidden the medicine in the stable because the sender warned that official delivery records were being monitored. Ethan immediately suspended the ceremony that would have named Victoria his chosen Luna. He explained that no royal appointment could continue while a forged order and altered medical records were under investigation. Victoria objected that canceling the ceremony would create public doubt, but Ethan replied that the public had already been told 3 living royal animals were dead. Doubt was now justified. Mason escorted Victoria to her guest suite under supervised residence while the record rooms were secured. Ethan then asked Clara to help him examine the pups. Each wore a narrow leather collar almost completely hidden beneath its fur. Clara carefully turned the silver pup's collar and found a small metal plate stamped with a crescent surrounding a pine tree. The same mark appeared on the other two. Ethan recognized it as the symbol of an old covenant between the Blackwood Crown and the northern communities. His mother had taught him that wolves born with the silver ridge along their backs were guardians of that covenant, but every official account claimed the line had ended 20 years earlier. If the three pups carried the mark, their survival proved the royal archive had been falsified long before the winter storm. Owen Reed stood near the doorway, pale and silent. When Ethan asked why he looked frightened rather than surprised, Owen finally lowered his head. He admitted that he had known the pups were alive. On the night of the storm, a masked palace officer had brought them to the stable with an order to transfer them beyond the kingdom. Owen noticed that the smallest pup was ill and refused to send them into the snow. He hid them beneath the rear stalls while Ghost guarded the entrance. When the palace announced their deaths the following morning, Owen understood that reporting the truth could place the pups in greater danger. He had secretly delivered food until council inspectors began watching the stable. Ghost had kept them alive after Owen could no longer enter. Clara asked why Owen had never appealed directly to Ethan. Owen revealed that every message he sent was returned unopened with Ethan's private seal, accompanied by warnings that his family would lose their home if he continued. Ethan's expression hardened, not at Owen, but at the realization that someone close to the throne had controlled his correspondence. Owen then removed an old stable ledger from beneath his coat. Inside was the original transfer order. The paper carried the same outdated seal used against Clara, but the signature at the bottom belonged to a council member who had supposedly been hundreds of miles away that night. Before Ethan could read the name aloud, Mason entered with worse news. Every official record of the pups, including their birth register, had vanished from the archive during the previous hour. Ethan read the signature on the transfer order. Aloud, Councilman Richard Hale, the senior official responsible for royal succession records. Hale had attended every meeting concerning the missing pups and had personally certified their deaths. Mason reported that Hale was no longer inside the castle. His carriage had passed through the eastern gate shortly before Ethan arrived, using travel papers approved by Victoria's private secretary. Victoria denied authorizing his departure and claimed her secretary had acted without permission. Ethan ordered the roads watched, but insisted that no one be accused without evidence. Clara studied the stable ledger while the white pup slept against Ghost's side. Beside the date of the winter storm, Owen had recorded the weight of each pup and the condition of its collar. The numbers matched Dr. Abigail's and signed medical request. Someone had built two separate trails, one official and false, the other hidden but precise. Clara suggested that the missing birth register might not be the only proof of the pup's identity. Abigail explained that royal animals were examined at birth and that a sealed sample of fur was routinely sent to the northern sanctuary. Ethan asked Mason to contact the sanctuary, but Mason revealed that all northern correspondence had been redirected through Hale's office for nearly a year. The same councilman had controlled the records, the mail, and the declaration that the Guardian line had ended. Before Mason could leave, a young kitchen worker arrived with a folded note found inside Ethan's travel bag. The message contained only an address in the Old Market District and the words, "Ask for Caleb Moore." Ethan recognized the handwriting as the same hand that had warned him to return before dawn. He wanted Clara to remain under protection at the castle, but Clara noticed 3 tiny dots beneath the address, matching the colors of the pups. Whoever wrote the message knew exactly what had been hidden. She argued that she could identify the medicinal scent and the person who had collided with her near the supply corridor. Ethan reluctantly agreed that she could accompany him, provided Mason and 2 trusted guards came as well. Ghost followed them to the courtyard gate, but Clara asked him to stay with the recovering pups. He looked toward Ethan as though demanding the same promise. "I will bring her back," Ethan said. They found Caleb in a closed bookshop less than a mile from the castle. He was the junior clerk who maintained supply and archive requests for Hale's office. Caleb admitted that he had sent Ethan the warning after discovering orders to remove Clara before sunrise. He also confessed that the pups' deaths had been fabricated to convince the northern communities that the ancient Guardian Covenant had ended. Without living guardian wolves, Hale's faction could claim those communities no longer held protected voting rights on the Royal Council. Ethan asked Caleb to testify publicly, but Caleb refused. His younger sister Emily worked at a council residence outside the city, and Hale's secretary had warned that she would lose her position and housing if Caleb spoke. Ethan promised Emily safe lodging and independent employment, yet Caleb still hesitated. Clara then described how the smallest pup had struggled to breathe because someone feared the truth it represented. Caleb closed his eyes, reached beneath a loose floorboard, and removed a bundle of copied records. On top was the missing birth register. Beneath it was a sealed letter in the late Queen's handwriting, addressed to Ethan and marked to be opened only if the council ever declared the guardian line extinct. Ethan opened his mother's letter in the quiet back room of the bookshop. The former queen explained that the guardian wolves represented a binding promise that northern villages would retain their land, water access, and council seats as long as the Blackwood family protected the guardian line. She had discovered an effort to erase that promise years earlier and had hidden duplicate records in several locations. The letter did not name every participant, but it warned that anyone declaring the wolves extinct would probably be seeking control of northern resources. Caleb's copied documents supported her warning. Hale had proposed transferring protected forests and mineral rights to companies owned by council families, with the final vote scheduled for the morning after Ethan's chosen Luna ceremony. Before returning to the castle, Caleb admitted that he had removed the original birth register from the archive when he learned Hale intended to destroy it. Ethan ordered Mason to bring Caleb and the records through a guarded entrance, then sent trusted officers to escort Emily from the council residence. They arrived too late. Emily had been moved less than an hour earlier in a gray council carriage. At the castle, Clara found Victoria waiting under guard in a reception room near the stable. Victoria claimed that Hale had deceived her, but she admitted knowing the pups were alive. She had remained silent because Hale promised her family control over the northern trade routes. Victoria placed travel papers and a pouch of money on the table. If Clara left the kingdom before the public inquiry, Victoria promised that Emily would be released safely. Clara examined the papers and noticed that they required her to leave through Eastbridge Gate using the phrase 3 Pines as a countersign. Mason recognized the same phrase from a route permit found in Hale's office. The gray carriage carrying Emily had also been seen traveling toward Eastbridge. Clara realized the papers were not merely an offer. They were instructions for a planned exchange. Ethan refused to let her face it alone. Mason placed trusted guards along the route, assigned one of his officers to drive Clara's unmarked carriage, and sent another team to watch the abandoned toll house beyond Eastbridge. Clara agreed to serve as the visible traveler because Victoria's secretary would expect to see her. Ghost and all 3 pups remained safely with Abigail, who confirmed that the smallest pup still needed rest. At noon, Clara's carriage approached Eastbridge Gate. She gave the required countersign, and a gate clerk quietly handed the driver a folded note directing them toward the old toll house. Mason's officers had already seen Victoria's secretary enter the building and had confirmed that Emily was inside. Clara's carriage stopped several hundred yards away, where she remained protected while Mason approached with his team. The secretary surrendered the toll house keys after learning that Hale had fled the city and left him to accept responsibility for the entire scheme. Emily emerged frightened but unharmed. She had hidden an important object beneath her cloak, the original council voting ledger Hale had ordered her to burn. She had delayed long enough to save it by claiming the damp fireplace would not light. Inside the ledger, Victoria's signature appeared beside the proposal to declare the Northern Covenant permanently obsolete. Several additional signatures belonged to council families that would receive the protected land. The travel papers provided another direct connection. Their authorization number matched a private account controlled by Victoria's household. When Clara returned to the castle with Emily, the pups were waiting inside the open stable doors. The silver and charcoal gray pups hurried toward her, while the recovering white pup followed slowly beside Ghost. Ethan watched them gather around Clara, then looked at the ledger in her hands. Victoria had tried to make Clara disappear before the truth became public. Instead, Her own offer had revealed Emily's location and delivered the evidence that could expose the entire council plan. 3 days later, the Great Hall opened for a public inquiry. The delay gave Dr. Abigail time to test the residue from the feeding bowls, Mason time to verify the recovered records, and representatives from the northern villages time to reach Blackwood Castle. Ghost entered beside Clara, while the silver and charcoal gray pups followed her to a cushioned enclosure. Abigail carried the recovering white pup inside and placed it beside them. Their presence disproved the council's claim that the guardian line had ended. Ethan began with the order used to confine Clara. He pressed his current signet beside its wax impression, revealing the missing line through the crown that proved the order carried an outdated seal. Owen presented the transfer order bearing the same false mark and explained how the pups had been brought to him during the winter storm. He also admitted that he had anonymously asked Abigail to prepare the restorative medicine and had hidden the bottle behind the stable trough. He had placed the former queen's warning inside the wax, so anyone finding the medicine would know the official records could not be trusted. Abigail confirmed Owen's account and identified the residue in the bowls as the sedative taken from the royal pharmacy. Victoria's secretary admitted signing for it on Hale's instructions. He also confessed that he had watched Clara through the stable's observation panel and released diluted sedative vapor through the lower vent to make Ghost and the pups sleep before Clara could reveal they were alive. Victoria claimed she had never approved that specific act, but the secretary testified that she had ordered Clara removed before Ethan returned. Emily then presented the original voting ledger recovered from the toll house. Victoria's signature appeared beside a proposal declaring the Northern Covenant obsolete and transferring protected forests, mines, and water rights to an authority controlled by council families. Caleb produced the pup's original birth register. He explained that he had removed it from the archive before Hale's agents could destroy it, then replaced its empty folder to make them believe the evidence was gone. The register recorded the pup's colors, birth weights, and crescent and pine collar marks. Ethan next addressed the question of the white pup's unusual collar. Owen explained that it was a ceremonial guardian collar entrusted to Northern Covenant keepers by the former queen years before the pups were born. Her written instructions required them to place it on the next white guardian pup if the council ever attempted to declare the line extinct. After the pup's birth, a northern keeper had delivered the collar to Owen in secret. Clara opened the hidden compartment beneath its metal plate and gave Ethan the waterproof letter inside. The former queen named 3 council families that had previously tried to dissolve the covenant. Hale's family was one of them. A messenger then reported that Hale had been stopped peacefully at a northern checkpoint. His carriage contained property agreements benefiting all 3 named families. Victoria admitted accepting Hale's promise of influence over the northern trade routes, although she maintained that he had designed the larger scheme. Ethan replied that ambition did not excuse decisions made with full knowledge of their consequences. He suspended every official connected to the agreements and transferred the case to independent judges with no ties to the palace or council. Then he acknowledged publicly that Clara had protected the guardian pups when the institutions surrounding the crown had failed them. Before he could offer her a title, Clara made a different request. She asked him to restore the Northern Covenant through permanent public law and create an archive that no king, council, or powerful family could ever control alone. Ethan accepted Clara's request before everyone in the Great Hall. He restored the Northern Covenant by royal proclamation, but Clara reminded him that a promise depending on one king could be erased by the next. Over the following weeks, Ethan worked with elected village representatives and independent judges to place the covenant within permanent law. Northern communities regained their protected council seats, and every proposed transfer of their forests, mines, and water rights was canceled. Copies of royal decisions were placed in public archives throughout the kingdom so no single office could control the truth again. Hale, Victoria, and the suspended council members received fair hearings before judges who held no royal appointment. The evidence confirmed that Hale had organized the false records and property scheme, while Victoria had knowingly supported Clara's confinement and the attempt to erase the covenant. They were permanently removed from public authority and ordered to return every financial benefit connected to the plan. Victoria's secretary received a reduced judgment after providing complete testimony. while Caleb and Emily were given secure positions in the new public archive. Owen was cleared of wrongdoing. Ethan publicly thanked him for protecting the pups when following an official command would have placed them in danger. Dr. Abigail established new safeguards for animal medicines, requiring 2 independent signatures and open delivery records. The forbidden stable changed most of all. Its iron doors were removed, the narrow windows were widened, and sunlight filled stalls that had remained dark for years. Clara designed the space as a public animal care center where farmers, stable workers, and village children could learn how to help frightened or injured animals. She refused Ethan's first offer of a royal title. She did not want kindness to become a position granted by the crown. Instead, she accepted leadership of the center through an independent council that included healers, workers, and representatives from the northern villages. Ethan respected her choice, even though it gave him no convenient reason to keep her near the palace. He soon discovered that he did not need one. He visited the center each morning to review the pups' progress, although Abigail repeatedly assured him they were healthy. Clara noticed that his questions gradually became less about the wolves and more about her plans, her childhood, and the life she hoped to build. Ethan told her about the guilt he carried for trusting sealed reports instead of looking beyond them. Clara did not excuse his mistakes, but she recognized how steadily he worked to correct them. Their affection grew through honest conversations rather than royal promises. Ethan also ended the custom that allowed the council to select a chosen Luna for political advantage. If he ever asked someone to share his life, he declared, the choice would belong freely to both people. 3 months after the inquiry, the new care center opened during a bright spring celebration. The white pup, now strong and energetic, ran across the courtyard with the silver and charcoal gray pups close behind. They circled Clara before racing toward Ethan, finally trusting him again. Ghost watched from the open doorway. When Ethan stopped beside Clara, uncertain whether the moment belonged to the king or simply to the man she had come to know, Ghost rose and gently pressed his shoulder against Ethan, nudging him closer. Clara laughed and offered Ethan her hand. He accepted it without making a command or a promise he had not yet earned. Around them, the 3 pups settled in the sunlight, and the stable once used to hide a lie became the place where an entire kingdom learned that trust could never be forced behind a locked door.